There's no question that President Trump is the president of peace and deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for the historic achievements of his first term alone.
You what? You think he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize because he's the president of peace? This is the guy who announced that he intends to invade Panama. And I believe that that's absolutely 100% real. Do I think he's going to invade Greenland? No, I don't, because there would be serious consequences for that, economic and otherwise. France said that they were going to put troops in Greenland to protect it. I think he knows better than to attack Greenland, but I think if he believed he could get away with it, he absolutely would. The point is that he talks about going to war all the time. He declared war on the cartels in Mexico, justified legally bombing Mexico. Like, really? He started trade wars, like countless trade wars. He's the president of peace? Where is your head? Where did you get this? This is just fictitious trash. I'll tell you who I think deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, there's a guy named Elie Wiesel. He wrote a book titled Night. It was about his experience in Auschwitz in the concentration camp, the Nazi concentration camp. He received a Nobel Peace Prize and gave a speech on it and everything. He deserved it. What did Donald Trump do to deserve it? Did he spend time in a concentration camp? Did he, as a prisoner is what I mean. Sorry, not as like the administrator, but as a prisoner. Has he done that? Has Donald Trump actually ended any wars? Has he actually improved people's lives materially? Has he spread democracy legitimately through the world without like imposing it on people or whatever? No. He's engaged in colonialism, in imperialism. He has threatened people and ruined lives and is shipping people to a concentration camp, a literal concentration camp in Guantanamo Bay right now. Where in that equation do you get Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, she wasn't the only one that suggested the Nobel Peace Prize. Like, I don't get what it is about people recommending a Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump of all people.
To you all,
this is another CPAC speaker.
The American taxpayer, to recoup the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been invested in this war. Because you know what? You know what Europe's contributions are? Europe's contributions are in the form of loans.
This is all lies. Pretty much everything that he's saying here is Russian propaganda. He's repeating Russian propaganda, as has Donald Trump. Trump repeated Russian propaganda about Ukraine. The money that we send, or the supplies or whatever that we send to Ukraine, is the best money that we have ever spent. We are discrediting a historical adversary, a country that views themselves as an adversary of ours, not something that I want. It's something that Putin is saying. He says he's an adversary of the United States. It discredits them on a world stage and proves that they're not anywhere near as strong as they want everybody to think. They can't even take on little Ukraine, their neighbor. Third strongest military in the world, Anyway, the point is that it's the best money we've ever spent. We are, and most of the money that we're sending, it's not even money, it's in supplies that we are manufacturing in the US. So the money that we're spending is going to guns, which are manufactured here and then sent to Ukraine. So all that money is going back into our economy. It's well spent. So don't listen to any of this trash straight out of Putin's mouth.
And they're often paid back on the interest on Russian assets that have been frozen. So Europe gets paid back, but the American people don't.
Not how it works. Complete nonsense, but okay.
I don't think so, right? And so that's the deal that we're putting in place. That's good for everyone. And yes, you have to talk to the Russian side to understand how we're going to get both sides to the table. And that's...
Well, that wasn't the complaint. If you're watching this 5 years in the future, the complaint is that the United States met with Russia to negotiate the Ukraine war without inviting Ukraine. They weren't even there. Why would they have this negotiation without Ukrainian representatives? That's the problem. I don't have a problem with you speaking to Russia, but don't pick up their propaganda and include everybody in the conflict in the negotiations. Again, it's all lies all the way down. But the point is at the end of this video here.
we're doing. Look, this is the common sense presidency. This is the presidency of peace. He's going to end the war in Europe. He is going to end the wars in the Middle East. He is going to reinvest the United States and our leadership in our own hemisphere, from the Arctic to the border to Panama, all the way down to our good friends in Argentina with Milei that you saw yesterday. And you know what? By the end of this all, we're going to have the Nobel Peace Prize sitting next to the name of Donald J. Trump. And who opposes peace? Like, I mean, how do the Democrats oppose peace?
You see what I'm saying, right? Who opposes peace? He says Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, and who opposes peace? You can't oppose Trump because he is in favor of peace. Are you shitting me right now? What has Trump done that has, like, promoted peace? What are you talking about? Point is, I don't know, like, where they're getting this. I think that this is just something that Trump wants. Like, he just really wants the Nobel Peace Prize. So he's getting people out there to talk about it, to promote it, to put him up, you know, for a nomination or whatever. Nominate him for the Peace Prize. Complete nonsense. He doesn't deserve the Peace Prize. And if there is a just world, he will never have the Nobel Peace Prize, ever. You know, Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, and I'm not even convinced that Obama deserved it. Obama got the prize, I believe, because he was the first black president, and it showed that it was kind of like the end of an era, the end of an era of segregation and oppression and everything else. I mean, obviously, there's still segregation and oppression in the United States, but it was a big step. Obama probably didn't deserve a Nobel Peace Prize because of all the drone attacks that he did. Like, he did so many drone attacks. He wasn't a president of peace by any stretch of the imagination. Like, it was really bad. Really bad. But he certainly deserves it more than, say, Donald Trump, who doesn't deserve it at all. And it's like an embarrassment that somebody would even recommend this, would suggest such a thing. Let's just, like, listen to a minute or two of Elie Wiesel talk, like, giving his Nobel Peace Prize speech. He received it and gave the speech, I believe, in 1986.
Your Majesty, Your Royal Highnesses, Starting President Joe Benkov, distinguished members of the government and parliament, Chief Rabbi of Norway, Bishop of Oslo, Excellencies, my sister Hilda, and of course my wife.
I'm going to cut out the silent parts. I'm just going to include, like, the parts that are important and relevant.
How can I thank you for the depth of your eloquence, for the generosity of the gesture coming from you and your colleagues? How can I thank you for building bridges between generations, names, and people? How can I thank you all for helping humanity make peace as its most urgent, as its most noble aspiration? For this is what you are doing, and there is nothing that is worthier of our respect and our affection for you. I am moved, deeply moved, by your meaningful and warm words, Chairman Orwick. And it is with a profound sense of humility that I accept the honor, the highest there is, that you have chosen to bestow upon me.
It's probably why Donald Trump wants it, because it's viewed as an honor.
I know your choice transcends my person. Do I have the right to represent the multitudes who have perished, of whom you have spoken? Do I have the right to accept this great honor on their behalf? Does anyone? I do not. No one may speak for the dead. No one may interpret their mutilated dreams and visions. And yet, at moments such as this, at all moments, I sense their presence. I always do. The presence of my parents, that of my little sister.
If I remember correctly, he tells his story in his book, Night, but I believe his little sister died at the concentration camp. His dad died at the camp also. Man, it was just, God, he's got like a really hard story.
How can I not sense the presence of those that were part of you, friends, teachers, companions? But this honor belongs to those who remember them. This honor belongs to all the survivors, to their children, and through us, to the Jewish people, with whose destiny I have always identified.
I believe that in his book, or in the foreword to his book at least, he said he doesn't believe in God anymore because of what happened to him, because he saw so many people die, because he was working in the camp by force, slave labor, while the ashes of his sister and his mom and his other family rained down on him from the crematorium chimney. It would, I get, it would be hard to believe in God after some like that. This guy got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he deserved it. What has Donald Trump done to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? Has he done anything like this at all? Like anything even close, even like approximating something like what Elie Wiesel has experienced?
I remember. It happened yesterday or eternities ago. A young Jewish boy discovered the kingdom of night. I remember his bewilderment. I remember his anguish. It all happened so fast. The ghetto, the decrees, the persecutions, the deportation, the sealed cattle car, the fiery altar upon which the history of my people and the future of mankind were meant to be sacrificed. I remember that young boy asked his father, "Tell me," he said, "can this be true? This is the 20th century after all. This is not the Middle Ages. Who would allow such crimes to be committed? And how could the world remain silent?" And now that very boy is turning to me. "Tell me," he says, "what have you done with my years? What have you done with your life, which is mine?"
So he's imagining himself as a young boy sitting in Auschwitz, talking to his adult self, saying, "What have you done with the time that you received after exiting the camp? What have you done with the time that people died to give you back, which was stolen by the Nazis?"
And then I tell him that I have tried to keep memory alive, that I have tried to fight those who forget, because as you have said, if we forget, we are guilty, we are accomplices, we could not prevent their death the first time. But if we forget them, they will be killed the second time. And this time it will be our responsibility. So I also explained to that boy who was asking me questions how naive he was, how naive we all were. The world did know and remained silent.
They did, absolutely.
And that is why I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must speak. We must take sides. For neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant.
When there's terrible suffering, borders become irrelevant. We shouldn't care where people are from or what their background is or who they are, whatever. We should care about helping.
Wherever men or women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe. Of course, since I am a Jew profoundly rooted in my people's memory and tradition, my first response is to Jewish fears, Jewish needs, Jewish crises. For I belong to a traumatized generation, one that experienced the abandonment and solitude of my people. It would be unnatural for me not to make Jewish priorities my own. It would be unnatural for me not to love Israel with all my heart as I do. Please remember what I remember.
So what he's doing here, he's about to criticize Israel, basically. He's about to say Israel is doing something really terrible to the Palestinians and it needs to be examined. And I know that Israel will do the right thing and back off. That's basically what he said. I think, is he still alive? There's no way he's still alive, is there? He died 2016 at 87.
Israel, if God forbid defeated, it would be the end of Israel. The only country in the world which is so endangered, totally in its existence.
You know, like Israel was in a lot of ways just as bad at the time as they are today. One of the big problems is that like Israel conflates being Jewish with being Israeli. It's an ethno-state. They believe themselves to be the only legitimate like rulers or politicians or whatever in the country. So they exclude everybody else from the democratic process. That's nationalistic and that's destructive as it gets. Elie Wiesel, at the time in 1986, felt that Israel was like the last stand. Like if some goes down like it has historically against the Jews, then they will be safe in Israel, or they can fight from Israel at the very least. But Israel is perpetrating the exact same horrors that the Nazis perpetrated in World War II. So now, you know, and even back then, there's no excuse.
How can we, people such as myself, not think in these terms? But I am also, of course, committed to Soviet Jews who need freedom and Jews in Arab lands who need solidarity. But I said that Jewish priorities are my first priorities. They are not exclusive. Others are important to me. Other people, other ideas, other situations, other tragedies matter to me. Believe me that apartheid
in South Africa, right? It hadn't come to an end yet. That didn't end until 1991, I think.
Is in my view as abhorrent as anti-Semitism. To me, Andrei Sakharov's isolation is as much of a disgrace as Yosef Biegun's imprisonment and Ida Nudel's exile, as is the denial of solidarity and its leader Lech Wałęsa's right to dissent, and Nelson Mandela's interminable imprisonment.
Nelson Mandela, the leader, or was a civil rights leader in South Africa during apartheid. I think he was the first black president after apartheid collapsed and a new government with a new constitution formed, if I remember correctly. I think Mandela also got a Nobel Peace Prize, and it was very much deserved in his case. Elie Wiesel goes on to say that he cares about the Palestinians suffering too. Super respectable. He's written about this at length and was just a respectable person. He deserved the Nobel Peace Prize. Again, what did Donald Trump do to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize precisely? What did Trump do for that?
There is no question that President Trump is the president of peace and deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for the historic achievements of his first term alone.
What did he do in his first term to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? What did he do in his first term that is even close to a little bit comparable to what Elie Wiesel did?
There is so much injustice and suffering crying out for our attention. Victims of hunger, of racism, and political persecution. Certain fascist regimes, like in Chile, or Marxist regime, like in Ethiopia and in other places of the world, where writers and poets are prisoners. And there are so many prisoners in so many lands, by the left, by the extreme left, and by the right, the extreme right. Now, you know, as I do, that human rights are being violated on every continent. More people are oppressed than free. How can one not be sensitive to their plight? Human suffering anywhere concerns men and women everywhere. And in spite of what some extreme critics have said about me, that principle applies in my life also to the Palestinians, to whose plight I am sensitive, but whose methods I deplore when they lead to violence. Violence is not the answer. Terrorism is the most dangerous of answers. I know they are frustrated, and that is understandable, and something must be done about it. The refugees in the refugee camps and their misery, the children and their fear, the uprooted and their hopelessness. I know something must be done about their situation. I know that too. Both the Jewish people and the Palestinian people have lost too many sons and shed too much blood. This must stop, and all attempts to stop it must be encouraged peacefully. Israel will cooperate. I am sure of that. I trust Israel, for I have faith in the Jewish people.
Well, he was incorrect, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, and he lived long enough to see that. 2016, Israel was just as monstrous as ever in 2016. It's just like really horrific and sad. There's nothing that's going to fix it. Until Israel basically stops being an ethno-state and absolutely like ultra-nationalist nutcases, that's what's going to happen. They just have to give up their ultra-nationalist roots. That's it.
Let Israel be given a chance. Let hatred and danger be removed from her horizons, and there will be peace in and around the Holy Land. Yes, I have faith. I have faith in God, in the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I even have faith in his creation. Without faith, no action would be possible, and action is the only remedy to indifference.
The point is that the guy cares about solving the human suffering problem. He used his platform as a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize to try to draw attention to the most horrific parts of society, of human society in that moment. Again, I ask, what did Donald Trump do that deserves the Nobel Peace Prize precisely?
Down to our good friends in Argentina with Milei that you saw yesterday. And you know what? By the end of this all, we're going to have the Nobel Peace Prize sitting next to the name of Donald J. Trump. And who opposes peace? Like, I mean, how do the Democrats oppose peace?
What did he do to deserve that? The answer is nothing. He doesn't deserve the Peace Prize. He will never deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. If there's something opposite of the Nobel Peace Prize, maybe he deserves that. The exact opposite. The Nobel, I've f***ed everything up for everybody prize. Anyways, just like disgusting. Just really disgusting that anybody would even suggest such a thing. That Trump gets a Nobel Peace Prize. Just bad. Tell me what you think in the comments. Let's just listen to a little bit more of this, though.
Indifference, the most insidious danger and disease of all. Isn't this the meaning of Alfred Nobel's legacy? Wasn't his fear of war a shield against war? There is so much to be done, and there is much that can be done. I have learned it in my life. One person, a Raoul Wallenberg, for instance, an Albert Schweitzer, a Martin Luther King, one person of integrity, of courage, can make a difference.
Martin Luther King, that was really interesting. He shouted him out.
A difference of life and death.
Like all of the people on the list who deserve Nobel Peace Prizes or have been nominated for them or have received them or whatever are people or are the types of people that Donald Trump attacks and hates and spews vile garbage about them. Why does he think he fits in with this group of people? And you know what's really sad about it? The fact that Donald Trump has been nominated in the first place by multiple people, multiple times. He's been nominated for the prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. That is just sad.
And therefore I know that as long as one dissident is in prison, our freedom will not be true, As long as one child is hungry, our lives will be filled with anguish and shame. For I have seen children hungry. What all these victims need, above all, is to know that they are not alone, that we are not forgetting them, that when their voices are stifled, we shall lend them ours, that while their freedom depends on ours, the quality of our freedom depends on theirs. So this is what I say to the young Jewish boy wondering what I have done with his years. It is in his name that I speak to you and that I express to you my deepest gratitude. You should know that no one is capable of gratitude as one who has emerged from that kingdom of night.
No one is capable of gratitude if they haven't emerged from that kingdom of night. He's talking about, his book was called Night, and it was basically about the darkest moment in human history, the darkest moment in his own history. Those who have not experienced true, deep grief, danger, and pain. He's saying they won't be able to experience true gratitude. I don't know if that's true, but I get the sentiment he's laying down for us here.
Know that every moment is a moment of grace. Every hour is an offering. And not to share them would mean to betray them and mean not to be worthy of them. Our lives no longer belong to us, no longer belong to us alone. They belong to all those who need us desperately. And therefore I say thank you, Chairman Egil Aarvik, and thank you, the very distinguished members of the Nobel Committee. And thank you, people of Norway. Thank you, people of Norway, for declaring on this singular occasion that our survival has meaning for mankind.
Yeah, that's the end of the speech. Trump is not even in the same ballpark as Elie Wiesel. Not even close. They have nothing in common. Nothing. They stand for two completely different, ideologies, two completely different, beliefs, two different everythings. And Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. I think that Trump has only been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 4 times. I mean, 4 is way more. It's 4 more than it should have been, but Trump's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for the 4th time, a recognition prompted by his role in brokering the historic Abraham Accords. This is January 31st, 2024 is when this article was written. Trump did not broker the Abraham Accords, and the Abraham Accords did not bring peace to the Middle East. The Abraham Accords were basically just a deal to get, I believe, the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, a little country in the Middle East there. They got the UAE to trade openly with Israel. They opened trade partnership or whatever. And that was a big deal because nobody in the Middle East wants to work with Israel because of what they're doing to Palestine right now. And that was shot to shit when Israel ramped up their genocide against the Palestinians. So Trump likes to claim he brokered peace in the Middle East, but A, that didn't even work. The Abraham Accords didn't stick, and they didn't even do that much in the first place. Great, one country is openly trading with them. Fantastic. And B, Trump didn't even do the deal. I believe it was Jared Kushner who kind of, worked this whole deal out in the first place. So he doesn't deserve it at all. Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney spearheaded the nomination, emphasizing Trump's instrumental role in the signing of the Abraham Accords in September 2020. These accords aimed to normalize relations between Israel, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, with later agreements involving Morocco and Sudan. Tenney highlighted Trump's unprecedented efforts in facilitating new peace agreements in the Middle East, challenging long-standing beliefs that such agreements were unattainable without resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Yeah, so obviously it was attainable, but it was going to crumble. It's going to fall apart, nearly instantaneously. The moment the genocide ramps up again, it's going to fall apart. And it did, as predicted. It was pointless for Donald Trump to do this or to take part in this or whatever. And everybody knew that. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. I just don't get how these poor, ridiculous, dumb fools can say these things with a straight face.
But by the end of this all, we're going to have the Nobel Peace Prize.
How do they say this? Tell me what you think in the comments.